If you clicked on this video, it's probably because you want to improve at chess, and you are in luck because I will fix one of the single biggest mistakes you make. And it's listening to the wrong chess teachers. But you have me now, so don't worry. Most chess teachers just tell you that chess is like an argument, and you are constantly making arguments and trying to win them and prove that you are correct. But they never tell you how that's useful. So I will show you a game I played in a tournament, and we were playing with black. So I play the Carcom. He develops the knight. I take the center. And after takes and takes, he argues that he is better in the exchange variation of the Carcom. After d4, I develop the knight, and he goes for c3. This is all practically mainline theory. And he's not really fighting for g4, and he's not fighting for f5. So I am not stressed about developing the bishop. I know that the engine says the best move is g4. I will argue that knight to f6 is a little bit better because he's not stopping our bishop from developing, and we don't know to which square our bishop wants to go, but we know for sure that the knight will go for f6, and you should always develop the most flexible piece first. In practically 100% of the variations, our knight will go to f6. But if our opponent, for example, plays h3, our bishop will go to f6, and if our opponent plays his bishop to d3, our bishop will probably go to g4. So we don't know yet which square we want our bishop. That's why we develop the knight first. And our opponent does develop the bishop to d3. So now we know for sure that our bishop wants to go to g4, which is now the most flexible move. Our opponent castles, and the engine just wants to launch a very fast attack instantly. Probably move the queen here just to stop the bishop from developing. And probably just some sort of an attack with moving the bishop backwards, moving the knight in, maybe taking this knight, maybe rotating, maybe trading this off to open up the rook, and using our queen as imminent pressure, and maybe in the future to start a minority attack. I just play e6, that's like the easiest move, just making the chain that we make in 100% of the variations, and our opponent develops the bishop. The engine loves this idea of queen to c7, and if he takes, we just take back and we play with this structure. The engine likes it because we have the bishop pair, and after h3, he just wants to sack the bishop, which is funny. If take and take, this is almost indefendable. You have to play this, sack the knight back. We will have this disgusting light square structure, just completely killing his bishop and making our bishop a beast. You have to instantly defend against things like bishop to d6, and after take and take, opening up more lines. If the queen didn't defend the pawn, that was already mate. And the engine wants to go for something like that. It's a funny variation, but I just broke the pin. Um, the engine also likes this, develop, and now go for this. And if you take and take, the same thing applies. And probably the same sacrifice, yes, indeed. Our structure is damaged, but you just see a very fast attack brewing here. And he has to find instant counterplay. And after take and take, he has a weak pawn. We can castle to the open foul, putting pressure on his d pawn, connecting the rooks, which can attack the king. And this will go into a very, very complicated and difficult situation. Let's say he just takes after takes. You already have incredible pressure here, but there is nothing yet. Um, because of this knight, if the knight was gone, we have bishop check, king has to move, and then we just sack the bishop. He's forced to take, and now we made space for our queen to go. So you would think that the bishop is in the way of the queen, and this is checkmate, but we can just forcefully give away the bishop, after which we will just mate him. The engine wants to go back just to give the check again, so that does not really make sense. Or just give this check to bring our other rook. That's just disrespectful. Just takes to give a check again and just give away this rook for nothing is quite funny. I cannot lie, but very unnecessary. So the engine wants to go for something like that. I just broke the pin. Very easy move. He develops the knight and defending the other knight, which is very useful because in a lot of situations we will develop the rook to c8, and we will always have this tactic on this whole file of knight takes to d4, and if it's not defended with a knight, he will have to take back with the pawn, and then everything behind the pawn can be attacked with the rook. A very, very common idea in this position, but there has to be either a pin going or the knight has to be undefended, and usually after rook to c8 and queen to c2, because this tactic usually works with a queen to c2. After it takes, this is not a pin anymore, so he can just take with the knight. Therefore, after queen to c2, we want to take the knight, but he can take with another knight and just reinforce the d4 pawn with a knight. So if this knight wasn't defending the knight, he cannot play queen to c2 because of takes, and knight takes on d4. With a rook on c8, the pawn is pinned to the queen is attacked, has to move, and then we just want a free pawn. So developing the knight, very natural and good move. And now I kick the bishop, he takes, and I just stuck with the bishop. I thought that this was very nice pressure to have, especially because I want to cook a minority attack, break apart this pawn structure, and I thought I would have immense pressure on the d pawn. Also, my bishop is killing this knight. Together with this knight, I'm clamping down on e5, which is always very useful. He played h3. And here, to be fair, you see the drawback of h6. I would love to play bishop on h5, but then g4 happens. I have to go back, and after takes and takes, my e6 pawn is way too weak. You could argue, yes, I got an open f file, which is always useful, but it's nothing against this pawn. This pawn is just horrific. After this, king defense, rook pressures. By the way, if he just allows e5, that should be a good move. I'm preparing e5. Let's say you just don't do anything for a second. Yeah, e5 is an ID. Trading off our weak pawn and activating a lot of our pieces. So in this variation, I wanted to go back and trade off these bishops, but I can't because I would have to take with the f pawn, leaving the e pawn way too weak. And this is exactly a bit where the lesson starts. So after takes and takes, I told you in the beginning of the video that a lot of teachers tell you that chess is a argument, and they don't really explain how that's useful. I will show you. So I castle, apparently not the best move. King to f8 is weird. But I castle. He develops the rook, just stopping this pawn break. So, or just trying to infiltrate, but you don't really have infiltration. So I don't know. This is just developing a rook. And here I play a6. A6 starts a minority attack. What does that mean? I very boldly tell my opponent, you cannot do anything on the king side with this, so I will attack you on the queen side. That's it. That a6 is a very bold statement because I need probably 4 moves, if not 5, to start an attack, and I just told my opponent, I don't think you can start an attack in 5 moves that I cannot avoid. So my opponent played knight to h2. Actually, a very cool idea that I didn't see at all ever. But I thought there's nothing. If the knight jumps, my bishop can go. You can maybe try to attack it, but if it comes down to that, I might have f5 or h5, or just draw back the bishop. Excuse me. I never thought that this was actually a good idea. The engine says I have to play g5. G5 just prepares that my bishop can go to g7, keeping everything well defended and keeping an eye on e5. If you don't know, e5 is a very, very important square in the Coracom. That's why the engine wants to play e5 and just make this pawn trade so that I can control e5 more easily, even if it gives me a d5 pawn. So the engine wants to make the argument that in this situation, leaving myself with a weak pawn is less of a threat than you controlling e5. That's the argument the engine wants to make. And obviously, it's the engine, so it's always correct. But I play b5, and here you see that that was not a good move. Why is b5 not a good move? I again invest a tempo in attacking my opponent on the queen side, leaving everything the same on the king side. So I again tell my opponent, I don't think you can do anything on the king side. Show me. He has to argue, I can attack you on the king side before you can attack me on the queen side. I'm arguing you cannot. And as the engine says, if my opponent finds h5, he can attack me. He's a bit better. But my opponent defends. And here after the game, we went over knight to g4. I wanted to play this. He prepared g5, and I did see this h5 move. So we were arguing h5. You can jump in the center, take, rook take this, and then you can attack me in all sorts of ways. I don't know, but a lot of these variations leave us in quite difficult territory. Let's say I want to again invest in my queen side and I just tell my opponent, I don't think you can attack me. Queen goes here, defending the pawn to prepare advancement. You can just kick my bishop, has to go back. You sag the knight, and this is not looking good. You can even sack your rook, and if I take, that's mate. This rook sacrifice is just taking away the pawn so that it doesn't defend g6 anymore. So if I tell my opponent on the wrong move that he cannot attack me, I will die. I will just completely evaporate. So in this variation, I would have to find a h5, which I did. Um, so my opponent played a3. After the game, I told him that I didn't like a3 for him because you are just giving away the information. So chess is an argument, right? This gives me the information that he thinks that my attack is more powerful than his attack and that he does not trust in his kingside attack. Therefore, he thinks the best move is stopping my attack. But that gives me a lot of confidence because my opponent just told me that his attack might not work and that he thinks that he has to defend against my attack. That's a lot of information. And that's the point I want to give you, that chess is an argument. I make the argument that I can attack you and you cannot do anything. My opponent just said, yes, you're correct. That's huge. That's huge. If he played more aggressive and I did the same thing of I want to develop my queen to start this attack, I'm screwed. Knight goes here. My idea was to go do this, but now I can get hit with this because the queen defends. I have to go here. You can go here. Let's say my bishop is quite safe and active here, but again, the same thing happens, rook sacrifice because the g6 square is way too important. If I take knight sacrifice, queen check, and mate. So if I argue on the wrong move that his attack does not work, and there is a way that the attack works, I just lose. That's why chess is an argument, but no one ever tells you this in detail. So here I again argue that my attack is stronger than yours. Prove me wrong. He said, no, I will not prove you wrong. I think you're correct. That's why on the next move, I play queen to b6. Again, because he gave me the information that he did not trust in his own attack. So I think, okay, let's go in. And then I will just start attacking. And my opponent just lets me reactivate his knight. Apparently, queen to h5 is winning. But even when we sat together to analyze the game, we never came up with this queen to h5 ID. Um, to be fair, I don't see another threat than just sacking the rook and then the queen gets in. Um, so I think I would just move the knight. Oh, you activate and now my bishop's trapped, so I cannot put my knight there. What if I just go like this? Same thing happens. And if I do this, you sag the knight. I never saw this knight sacrifice. I mean, yeah, that's valid. And now I have to block the bishop to stop checkmate, leaving my e-pawn undefended with an attack on the queen and the bishop. Damn. So again, I argued that my attack is better. The engine says I'm a moron. But only if he finds queen to h5, which we both didn't. Um, the engine says e5 is the best move, and if you know the positional chess rule, a flank attack is best met with an attack in the center. If you know that rule, then you know that e5 is just defending the flank attack. That this is not an offensive move. I'm giving myself a weakness to give myself a bit more activity so that I can defend. This looks offensive. It's a very defensive move. It is striking in the center to defend the flank attack and leaving my bishop not trapped, making sure that my rooks can get active, and if I try to attack here, that my pieces can transfer very quickly to my king. So I should have seen that his attack is very, very potent. I didn't. And then I would have to argue that I can defend or I can break open the center to leave my pieces very flexible. I didn't. I just 100% trusted in my attack. My opponent thought, okay, let's just reactivate the piece. I play bishop to g5. I thought that this was just a very active and annoying um, square. And the engine wants to do something like this to go for mate. I can always play g6 and h5 and then hide my bishop behind my pawn. So I think this is fine. But my opponent finds the best move. And the plan here is just to attack my bishop. So it has to move and then sack everything and try to get in. And this again is a thing. It's an argument that he says, okay, my king's safety is not important, and I'm willing to trade my king's safety for offensive measures. So the argument is that he says, I cannot stop this. You are winning on this side of the board, but the center is so locked that I'm willing to trade king's safety to attack you because I have to start an attack on the king side because I will lose on the queen side, and you left the center so locked that my king safety doesn't matter. And my opponent is very right. The center is so locked, king safety just doesn't matter. It doesn't at all. So he trades his king safety, which doesn't matter, for a pawn storm to attack my king and potentially win the game with a checkmate because he sees that he cannot defend this. And now the engine finds rook to e8, rook to e8 prepares e5, and the point of e5, let's see where it is. Where's e5? Where is e5? E5. So the point of e5 is that we trade some pieces. We trade a lot of pieces so that you cannot attack me, first of all. And I did give myself a weakness, to be fair. But now my pieces can very easily transfer wherever they want. I can still make this happen. And after some take, I have a passed pawn, you have a passed pawn, we have opposite color bishop. This is probably a draw. And if you can start a kingside attack, my pieces are very fast and flexible. They just can go to my king to defend. So that is what the engine wants me to find. Just move around all of my pieces to play a e5. I didn't at all. So here I played h5, which is completely losing, but I thought you want to attack my bishop, I will attack your knight. And here we didn't see, I thought e5 could happen. And if I take, rook takes, now my bishop's attacked and my h5 pawn is attacked, but it's also attacked by the queen. So if I move the bishop, I will lose this pawn, and if I defend the bishop, I will still lose this pawn. So I saw that after this, I cannot take the knight. My opponent didn't see this. I said, "Look, why not e5? And he just said, you can take, why would I trade? And I was like, this is hanging, that's hanging, this is hanging. Why wouldn't you want this? But what I didn't see is that also this knight threatens knight to d7. And that's why a lot of moves ago, the engine wanted to play g6 when my bishop was on f6. My bishop was on f6, it wanted to play g6 to play my bishop to g7, so I still monitor e5 because e5 is the money square. And I just play bishop to g5, giving him access to e5. And I'm completely losing here because I thought this was fine and I could just move the bishop or defend everything. I calculated this, by the way, but I just didn't see this fork. And my opponent missed this as well. So yeah, fair enough. I'm just completely losing, but my opponent played knight to h2. Again, this is a lot of information. I argue that the knight has to go now, and it is worthless on e5. My argument is wrong. It is very, very wrong. And my opponent saw, obviously, knight to e5, but he thought takes, and I can move while attacking the rook. But the rook can take the pawn and is completely safe. He missed that. So we both missed something different. So we made the same argument that knight to e5 cannot be played. He thought because of takes. I thought because I can just solidify the pawn structure and there is nothing. But I missed the move d6. So we both argued that e5 is not good, but it really is. And my opponent played knight to h2. Knight to h2, again, a very passive move. So my opponent clearly not comfortable. I played g6, just defending my pawn. And my opponent re-enters the knight into the game with f3. But this knight came from b1 all the way to d2 to f3 to h2 to g4 to h2 to f3. This knight wasted a lot of moves. But I mean, it was always useful and it could have already won him the game, but we both didn't see it. So here I was thinking, do I want to play bishop to h5 to make sure there is no rook to c1 ever? Or do I want to play bishop to f6 to control e5? E5 is the money square. Always defend e5. And now he played his queen to d2. Queen to d2 just tries to infiltrate on h6, I thought. So I thought, okay, so queen to d2, trying to infiltrate on h6. So I just play king to h7 and we are fine. But I missed his argument. His argument is not queen to d2 as a good move because I can infiltrate, because I saw the response bishop to g7, kicking the queen will have to move again, and now I have a free tempo because the queen moved twice for no reason. So here it is, my move, but then I make a move, you make a move, I make a move, you have to go back, and it's my move again. So I will win a move with that. So I thought, okay, so this is his argument. I could stop it, but it's just a bad move because if he does it, I can just play bishop to g7 and he will have to move, wasting a tempo. But I missed his argument. His argument is not that queen to h6 is good. His argument is actually knight to g5. This defends this so that his knight can jump there. So if I just make a random move, apparently the argument is this, but then this happens, you go here. I don't understand why the engine likes this, I can't even lie. That looks horrible. So I thought that this was just the move, but this surrenders control over e5 again. e5 money square, told you. And then I can just break open the center again, and the engine wants to argue that that favors me, even though weakening the pawn because I have to defend my king, and my queen will be more active, my knight can jump in the center, the scope of my bishop opens up. So here after queen to d2, I again played a5 because I really thought that queen to h6 is his argument, but I can play bishop to g7 and he will just waste the move. Then I thought, oh no, actually knight to g5 is the argument, and I missed his argument. So chess is an argument, but if you cannot give away your argument and do sneaky things, maybe your opponent answers wrong. So here again, I think he should have played very actively, and the engine thinks g4. Again, arguing my attack is stronger and opening up some king side files will benefit me. And obviously, it will benefit him because his knight is close, his bishop scopes my king, his queen scopes my king. If I surrender control over e5, his rook will infiltrate very quickly, and if the file opens, his king can slide and his rook can enter like this. So obviously, opening up the files would benefit him a lot. But he played rook to d1. And again, think about why. What is his argument? And this is where that tip is very, very useful, but you have to understand it. Why did my opponent play rook to d1? What is his argument? What is his logic behind this? Well, the logic, usually you want your rooks on open files. So the first thing I thought about was he is arguing that the d file will open up. But how? If the d file were to open up, it is because this pawn takes something. So that would be that the argument is that I have to play e5, but if I play e5, he already has the rook on the semi-open file. But e5 was never my plan, and you control it quite well, so why would I play e5? So then I thought, okay, so what is the argument of rook to d1? Then I thought maybe it's to defend the queen, but I'm not really attacking the queen, and I cannot attack the queen. And if I attack the queen and it has to be defended, it's with a queen. But I cannot attack the queen with my queen, so that's not the argument. So I thought maybe you want to move this queen and defend the bishop. So how is that useful? When will I attack this bishop? I don't know. I have zero clue. Then I thought maybe rook to d1 defends the pawn. And now I understood the logic. Rook to d1 is designed to defend this pawn because he is foreseeing that b4 will be met with a takes, pawn takes, And now this will break apart the structure. And I thought that this defends the pawn, which is heavily attacked, just so that you could take. But taking is a horrible move, and this is not defended with the rook. So here I thought rook to d1 designed to defend this pawn, so that if I play b4, you could take with the c pawn and leave the d pawn defended, but that just doesn't work at all. So I thought, okay, this is probably a very bad argument, so let's play aggressive. So again, I'm thinking what wants my opponent to argue. My opponent is arguing that rook to d2 is a good move for defensive reasons, so I have to play offensive. So I play b4 rather quickly and easily, and my opponent just has to go for counterplay. He takes, I take, and here my opponent makes a rather big mistake. Um, so my opponent should just open up files, attack my king because this attack is landing. I did prepare it well, and I will have some weakness on the queen side, exploit and attack the weakness on the queen side, probably win a pawn, probably after that win the d pawn, and then push my passed pawn. That's very difficult to stop because these pawns are way too weak. So he has to attack my king in order to win back the material like that. And that's why I love the exchange Caro-Kann. You are quite sure to win a pawn on the queen side, leaving the d pawn weak, probably winning the d pawn as well. And then you have a fast d pawn and a very easy plan. And if you know anything about the exchange Caro-Kann, it's just first you fight for the center, then you develop the pieces, then you defend your king, and when your king is safe, you launch a queenside attack, a minority attack, because you have the Carlsbad structure. That is what the pawns on the green lines are called. And then you just launch this attack and create a weakness. So let's say my opponent moved. I could have played takes and takes, and this is called a backwards pawn. A backwards pawn is a pawn that cannot be defended with other pawns, and rule one is control the square in front of it. We're doing an amazing job at that, and then attack it. And this pawn is not defendable with a pawn, which means that we will probably win it. And after we win this pawn, we will probably win the isolated d pawn, because again, it is not defended with pawns. And after we win both of these pawns, we have a passed d pawn. We will trade pieces like we just want, and then push our passed pawn. That's how you play the exchange Caro-Kann. This didn't happen though. My opponent played queen to c2. Queen to c2 is just designed to sacrifice the bishop. That is the only plan of queen to c2. It's just to sacrifice the bishop. So here I had to think. I could attack the queen. I could take this pawn. I could move the rook. I could do whatever I want. But is that more powerful than his argument? Is my argument more powerful than his argument? His argument to sacrifice the bishop after takes, queen takes, I will have to probably block the check with my bishop. Then my e pawn will fall to the rook, pinning the knight to my queen, leaving the d pawn and the b pawn isolated, my king very, very open. His knight will instantly be able to jump in. He can double the rooks, he can just slide in everywhere he wants. I thought no. Sacrificing the bishop probably works, and it is his only form of counterplay. I thought that this was very, very winning because I have achieved my minority attack. I will have a weakness, and I will probably win that weakness, and that's it. I thought that this was very, very winning. So I play king to g7, arguing that his sacrifice works, but my attack is not going anywhere. And then he played queen to d2, and here again I was quite confused. What is the argument of queen to c2? Because you just played, you have this position, right? So what changed? this. So here it is your move, and I just played king to g7 and got an extra move. But king to g7 obviously is a improving move. I control h6 infiltration, I defend the g6 pawn from sacrifices, and I got an extra move. So my opponent, clearly not satisfied with his position, gave me this, again trying to go to g5, make a pawn break, and attack me. And here I thought, okay, I could take, but after pawn take, I can attack the weakness. That's probably winning. The engine says I'm only slightly better. And then I thought, okay, rook to a2. Rook to a2, pinning this pawn to the queen, so that if I achieve pawn takes on c3, you would have to take with the pawn. Then I can take this, attacking the knight with a fork. So you probably have to take. Then I can take with the bishop, attacking the queen, attacking the b pawn through the queen, and attacking the f2 pawn. So the queen will have to move to the second rank to defend the f pawn. Then I could take the b pawn with the rook. So what I'm calculating, right? If you just do something dumb. I have take, knight takes. I am threatening to take this with a fork, so I thought you have to take. I have bishop take, attacking the queen and attacking the b pawn through the queen, and attacking the f pawn. So probably you have to slide back to defend this pawn. Then I can take this pawn, attacking the queen and attacking the f pawn. You have to move, and then this is just a fork. You have to move. I can take the queen. You have to take the queen. I can take the rook, take the rook. And now I'm up the exchange and 3 pawns. That's what I saw. So I thought, okay, rook to a2. I'm activating my piece with a threat. Shout out to like 3 videos ago, I believe. And my opponent thought, okay, attack the rook. You move the rook in. I argue that I can kick your rook out. But he missed my argument that I can take the c3 pawn. And this is again understanding the arguments. I am arguing that my rook is on a2, you cannot attack it away, and it can only be a good piece there. You argue I can kick out the rook. And I tell you, okay, but not before I take this pawn. And the point is that this pawn is still pinned because that was why the rook moved to a2 to pin the pawn to the queen. So you have to take with the pawn. And now I have 2 pieces attacking this pawn. Obviously, the queen is attacking the knight. So the queen is defending it. So taking with the queen is a bit risky, but after a long calculation, I did just take with the queen. Yes, my knight is hanging, but I argue that you cannot take it. And I mean, it's quite clear why. It's just a simple mate in 2. So again, I'm arguing you cannot take my knight and I want my queen here. By the way, my rook is hanging as well, but your queen is undefended. So I argue that my rook is hanging and my knight is hanging. But if you take my queen, I take back. My rook is not hanging anymore and my knight is not attacked anymore. So that's fine. And if you move the queen, yes, my rook is still hanging. By the way, if you move your queen anywhere here, I still have the pressure on f2. So you have to move the queen while defending f2. Then I could move my rook. I expected all of this to happen. And then I thought I just develop the rook, attack this pawn, and I will be very, very winning. My opponent maybe missed this or thought that that was too much pressure, traded queens, and then tried to go for counterplay, which is very valid. I attack this pawn and just argue like, you cannot defend this. And he cannot because he has a light squared weak bishop, a dark squared issue, and you cannot move this rook while defending the pawn, so you will lose this pawn. He took, I took back, he moved his king, trying to go for counterplay, and I took with the knight. So taking with the knight just threatens to take. I also thought about rook takes, but I thought of after knight takes and knight takes, yes, you have now this knight versus bishop endgame instead of an opposite color bishop endgame. If you know anything about endgames, opposite color bishop endgames are quite risky to be a draw. So I thought after takes and takes, maybe this could lead to a draw, but I thought it was fine. And I want to move in with threat. So here I'm only attacking a bishop. And like this, I'm threatening a fork. So he gave me a check, I moved, and now he took my knight so that I couldn't take his knight with a check. And he moved his bishop, his rook. This just defends the pawn. And I move the bishop back. So I want to just move this rook without blundering the bishop. So I move the bishop so that my passed pawn can move, so that my rook can move without blundering the bishop. My opponent doubled up the rooks, and here I slip a bit. And again, it is the power of the arguments. My opponent is arguing that there is counterplay here, and he is very, very correct. I was scared if I develop the rook, you get check. That's not a check. That he would have this. I would have to give a check. You can just move, and there is nothing here. And he's threatening mate in one. That's mate in one. I didn't see that his rook is hanging, so I can just take this with a pin. And now this rook is just basically hanging. You have to move. I'll just trade pieces or even put more pressure. That was a concept of, I think, 3 videos ago. No, 4, I think. It is that you can always exchange your pressure for material. Here, I can exchange my pressure for a rook trade, or I can put more pressure and get even more. So, I didn't see this. I didn't see that I could move the rook, and if you go for this checkmating ID, I can just take the bishop. And my opponent told me I play rook to b7, intending to meet rook to g6 with rook to h8. And now this is defended, and I stop checkmate. That's it. So, and my opponent already saw, so this is a quite defensive move, which means that I tell him, I trust in your offensive power, therefore I have to defend. And he already told me directly after the game, you didn't see rook takes on b1, did you? And I said, no, what? And he said, yeah, I saw, because I gave him the argument that I have to defend, aka I trust in your offensive power more than in my defensive power. So I defended the pawn for absolutely no reason, because I always have this tactic of rook takes bishop on b1, especially after the check. Let's say he moves in, I have check, move, and now I can take with a pin. And if you take my rook, your rook is hanging as well. I didn't see that at all. So that's quite sad. Mistake, quite easy tactic, and defended for no reason. Gave away the information that I didn't see this ID and that I trust in his counterplay. He obviously didn't play rook to g7 because it still works. After this, I can still do this tactic. But I told him already that it didn't work. I mean, I didn't see it. So he could just gamble, and I would have played this for sure. And maybe this position is quite good, but he can technically just blunder a piece because I already told him I didn't see it. So maybe I see after, maybe I don't. And if you're losing, you have to gamble a bit. You will not win this slow pace. So to be fair, I would have liked G7, rook to G7 more out of him. The engine will hate it, but I already gave you the argument. I didn't see this. But my opponent plays bishop to d3, and this is basically a blunder because I have rook to b3, attacking the bishop and attacking this pawn. What I'm threatening here is that if you just don't do anything, I will take the bishop, and if you move the bishop, I have check, and if you move back, this is mate. Mate. So you will have to just sag the rook. I can even attack it with the pawn here and just win a rook and go up a rook and a pawn. So this is a blunder. Maybe if my opponent played this, but I mean, I have the same thing that I can just attack everything and attack the bishop and the pawn behind it, and then yeah, just slowly move. This is pinned anyway, and then you can move the king. I can just move the bishop, where you cannot counterattack me. And here you just have to sack the bishop or do this, and then I can attack the rook, and the rook cannot move anywhere where you can still defend the bishop. So again, arguing that my offensive power is very, very strong, which it is. So I argue that you cannot defend this. I'm very correct. My opponent plays rook to d1. I play rook to a8, just intending to put more pressure on the spin. My opponent plays f4, so that I cannot give this check because the check is the way that I give mate in some variations. And here again, I taught rook a3, rook g3, h4, and then rook f8, and I didn't actually see what to do next. So I have check. You have to move basically, and I can just put my other rook here, and you cannot stop mate, which is incredible. Because I control this and I control this. So you cannot defend mate, and yeah, this is just GG. Like rook here is checkmate because you cannot move because of the bishop. I didn't see this idea of just slowly putting both rooks here, and you cannot stop mate because of the pawn and the bishop. So I was thinking here for quite a long time, and I thought, okay, rook to a3. He has rook g4. If I attack the rook, he can slide to f3, and I don't see what I have. I have to put both rooks here. I didn't see it. So I told you, okay, uh, h4, and I told him with this argument that I trust in his defensive powers of rook to g4. g3. That doesn't work. But I mean, I don't have an engine. I thought it works. He plays bishop to e2, just making sure he doesn't blunder. I play my rook to a3, and now I'm threatening checkmate. This is just mate. So the one thing he can do is move the rook so that check is always met with king to g2. He played bishop to g4, defending the pawn, but I have f4, kicking away the bishop, and after takes and takes, he has to move the rook so that if I take, he can move his king to g2. I take the pawn, forcefully trade rooks because it's a check and an attack on the rook. He takes, I take back, he moves the king, and here I move the pawn forwards, defended by the bishop. So I am up a bishop and two pawns. How do you convert this? He tries to infiltrate. I just block the file and I keep his king very, very passive. That's also a huge thing. His king is completely stuck in this corner. Um, that's beautiful. So he attacks the bishop. The engine wants to do rook to c3, but I thought he just comes back and I don't want to repeat. So I play bishop to d7, intending to meet rook to c8, pinning my bishop to my king with rook to e6. Yes, the king is out of the cage, but you have to stop this pawn and this pawn. So he just develops the king, I guess, or just brings it to the center. I can eventually push the pawn. If you push the king, I push the pawn. You cannot enter here because my rook. So that's just winning. He has to defend. I can take the pawn with an attack on the rook. He has to slide, and I play d2, and he just resigns. Because, I mean, this is his best move, but I can even just sag the bishop, and after take and take, king here, have a check, move here, move my rook back, and you cannot stop these promotions because of the rook. And I mean, I can also just checkmate with king and rook if I want to. Um, so he just resigned, and that's about it. I hope you understand that giving these arguments and that your opponent telling you if he trusts in his defensive resources or not is quite a massive deal. And other than that, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.